What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, back for another edition of the Monday Roundtable. We're going to go through Resultsdb for the tournament that was. We had a pretty wild memorial over the weekend at Jack's place. Situation there with John Rahm, a great little playoff to end it out with two California kids. I did talk about that last week, brought it up, sort of the Cali narrative, and you had Cantlay and Morikawa. X was a little further back. I thought he'd be in there as well, but X didn't mark the spot this week. So we'll get to the winners and everything we'll go through as usual here. But first, I'm going to bring in my guy, Mr. TJ Laessig at TJL5124. TJ, what's happening, my man? We're back.
Tambo, good to be back. Sorry for leaving you hanging a bit last week, but happy to be back here. And yeah, man, unfortunate situation for Rahm. Just six-stroke lead going into the final round. I think it was all but in the bag in terms of him getting the victory. But I guess on the bright side, it did leave for a little more Sunday excitement, whereas if Rahm had still been hanging around, I think it would have just been a matter of him walking to victory. But good golf. I think that this is a really awesome tournament and one that each year is going to put on a good show for us.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of my favorite tournaments, actually, that's a non-major. I just like it. There's so much to it. The history, Jack's place, like I said, like all these things that go with it are incredible. And you think about what we're going to have here in the future. We've got some more good events coming up. This week is an interesting one. We'll save that. That's not what we're here to talk about. But for those of you that are hopping in, we're just doing it same as always. You go to Rotogrinders.com. You simply head on over to the PGA tab, go down to Resultsdb, and then you can hop in there from here. I've got them already preloaded. Of note, like you said, I think one more interesting thing just while this loads is that, and then by the way, sorry, you just set the date if you haven't done this before to the previous Thursday. Go to contests and they'll all be there. But before that, yeah, just the Rahm thing. Like last year when he won it, it was with his buddy Ryan Palmer in the final group, and he just sort of did what you said. He cakewalked to it. So I do agree with you. I think that would have happened even last year. For those that don't remember, he got the 2-stroke penalty and still won the thing by 3 strokes. So I think we were going to see that again. Coming down the wire, though, that playoff, like when it's funny because Cantlay and Morikawa are two guys that we always say, like, you know, we know they're the best ball strikers. If they can just make putts, they're going to run away with this thing or have a chance to take it down. Hence why Morikawa has been so successful. That was Cantlay's 4th win he picked up yesterday, 2nd at Memorial there. So it just goes to show. And when they get their putter on, it's just game over. And that's why it was those two in the final. It reminded me almost of, and it ended much quicker, mind you, but the JT Morikawa playoff at the Workday, which was held there. So, you know what I mean? It was the same sort of setup going right back into it. Deja vu for Morikawa, but you know, in the playoff sense, but this time he didn't get the W. So overall, great event. Anything else on the Memorial before we hop in here? And then we're going to talk about a lot of it anyway when we get to the players.
And just with regards to Cantlay, it goes to show, right? I mean, he's been all but awful in recent form, but sometimes the guys like that we know long-term form are elite top-end golfers that all it takes is one weekend or 1 week of it all clicking and they could be right at the top of the leaderboard. So just found that's interesting. And I feel like we see it all the time, right? It's like, oh, how could I possibly play a guy that's missed, 4 of his last whatever cuts? But when you're that good of a golfer, sometimes it just takes the right course, the right fit for you, and you find yourself right at the top.
Yeah, and he said it in his interview after. It's obviously always easy to see the narrative after the fact. We're doing a results show here. There's always results-oriented takes and things that we can go into, but I do think that one, stuck out where he said, like, it's, Jack's place. I already won here before. He means a lot to me. I feel good every time I come out here, et cetera, et cetera. Jack's helped him out. He's been able to ask him questions and learn from him. And so just sometimes that's all it takes, right? Going back to a place you know and love and you get the job done. So this week we're going to look at this. We're going to look, here's all your tournaments. We're going to look at the $20 pitch and putt. I personally like this one. I know there was some complaints out there that I saw. We'll go and I'll show you the structure in a second. I thought it was fair. I know it's still 25% up top, but I like that breakdown. I like the smaller field of 58,000 versus the 117,000 or more that we're used to seeing. We're going to look at as well I think I brought up the $5 drive to green. I got a case study we're going to do there. Our guy Ski Basher, by the way, is up there again, but we're going to switch gears this week and go to somebody else because we've seen his stuff plenty in the past and he just continues to crush, which is awesome to see. I got another guy that's been crushing quite well, an RG member as well. So we'll look at him. And then I'm going to show you guys my $200 single entry this week. Made a little bit of a run, if you will, but didn't quite get there. So we'll round it out with that, TJ. I think that's the way to go about it. We'll start here with the $20 pitch and putt. This was, like I said, so I just didn't hate it. I know it's still pretty top heavy and whatnot, but getting 10 grand and up for the top 8, you think about it like a poker six max tournament. It's not great for sixth place at 15,000 shutout. Go Sixers go. He's always up there as well. Good guy to talk to about DFS. And you go up to the top here. Congrats to member Lariotto, 250,000. But I don't know. What do you think, TJ? 250, 100, 50, 30, 20? It's not terrible.
No, it's not terrible. It's a lot better than some of the ones that we see. I still, to me, a simple fix would just be make first 200 and then spread that 50 out to maybe some of the other spots. But it is what it is. We can't nitpick and complain too much. I think that is a pretty solid structure relative to a lot of the MME ones that we see.
Yeah, I think so. And I think like the other thing too is most weeks we see this anyway. So all it did is add an additional $250,000 to first and, get it set up that way by adding a little bit to the buy-in versus the normal $12 or $15 or however they usually run it out. So I'm good with it. Personally, I liked it. I didn't like my results in it, I'll tell you that much, but overall still a fun week, like I said, and good overall when you look at just what we got to see from a fan perspective. But Lariotto took it down. So let's look at this lineup here, TJ. We've got Xander, Cantlay, Scotty Scheffler, low owned, Kevin Streelman, Siwoo Kim, and Aaron Wise. This was the roundout here. So pretty unique lineup. Give me your thoughts on it, and then we'll go through after what I'm thinking.
Yeah, super interesting build. 3 9Ks, 3 7Ks. So not too often that we see someone that skips over 3 entire ranges, essentially. No 11s, no 10s, no 8s. I guess 4, no 6s either. But I like it from a build perspective. Think that Xander and Cantlay, 2 solid plays up towards the top of the 9Ks. Scheffler, really, really nice leverage, getting him at only 5%. He was maybe a little bit overpriced in my opinion at 9K, but I'm still a big Scotty Scheffler fan. So I think that's a great tournament leverage. Streelman was one of my conviction plays down in the value range, and then getting a little bit off the board down there with Siwoo and Aaron Wise and avoiding some of the 6K range. I thought overall the pricing was really interesting to me this week because I felt like there was a lot, because the field is so strong, you could go with more balanced builds like this, but there was also an argument to go with some stars and scrubs type builds. And I kind of liked that there were some people like Stanley, Knox at 6,100 that were playable. And I kind of liked that because too often it's like every single person under 6,500 is pretty much, you can't even imagine touching them. I kind of like having some guys, obviously not stone cold lock plays, but having guys that you could feel comfortable with in the low 6Ks, because I think it just expands the different range of roster constructions that you could make.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. That's the elephant in the room. We're definitely going to talk about that for a second. I had some thoughts there, and I was going to get to it. I wanted to first victory lap that he didn't make it to the winning lineup in the $20 but then it was damn close. He came in right behind here. And but this is what my point kind of was at the start of the week. And I know there's enough combinations out there that you're going to be able to find it, but you had to get the playoff. You had to get Ricky to, bounce back, have a second top 11. He came T10 at the PGA Championship. You had to hope for that again. Streelman, fine play. We liked Lowry, thought he was a good play. And then Stanley on top still has to come through at the 6,100 and the high ownership. And I guess my thing was just this. Tough. It's so tough. And my thing was, it was reeling off of the Vincent Whaley, right? The $6,200 Vincent Whaley the week before. But I just kept saying it it was, that was 8 straight top 36s. And even then he wasn't pushing what we knew this guy was going to be 15 to 20. And turns out 18 right in the middle was the number, give or take. So it's not the worst play. But I get from a game theory why people like myself would want to be off of it. And also, even if he came through, this is a T42 and then the perfect structure of guys around him, literally spent the money, which everyone was probably going to do, found the exact combination. So good for them. And that's great. But there was so many ways to go about it where you didn't need that. And you mentioned it before, and it does tie back into that, is that you could build stars and scrubs builds that didn't even go out of the 7K range. And then you could build lineups like this. Cards and I looked at this on the Wednesday show, just showing almost why you didn't have to have Stanley. And then we looked at ways, of course, you could get different within using Stanley. And then if you think about that here with Backyard 20, I know they won some good money somewhere else with Kyle Stanley. So good on them. I just, to me, like I said, and obviously 100's good money too, but I just was saying how you didn't need that play and everyone just wanted to auto assume that you have to go there. There was plenty of ways to get around it where you didn't need to go there. So, don't always feel like you have to go that way when weeks where that guy's just the obvious mispriced play, because you still need a lot of other things to go correct. You need them to go correct. You need the guys around them. And then you also need to have some leverage somewhere within your lineup against the rest of the field, because a lot of the lineups built are going to be very similar. Any other thoughts on Kyle Stanley and $6,100 plays at almost 20% ownership?
Yeah, I think the fade makes complete sense. Like, was it just a straight miss? Like, how did he end up at 6,100? So it's almost like something that you would see from FanDuel, not from DraftKings. It was really
usually where you see it for sure.
Yeah,
he was late out to the field, so
yeah, I guess that's really what happened. What do we think what did you guys think he should have been? Like high sixes?
I was thinking like 7,100, 7,200. Like it was definitely a misprice. So I see, that's what I'm saying. I was trying not to go too hard at people on it. I was just saying reasons why you don't need to go there. Right. And it's up to you, like how you space it out, right? Obviously ended up still working out for backyard 20 here, because I know he shipped something else on top of this 100K that when I was looking through my review, it's just, I guess that was my point, is that you didn't have to feel like you were forced to go there. And I know some of the ways, like Cards talked about this, and you've played a lot of high dollar single entry or high dollar smaller field entry, at least, if you will, where he was saying, look, I'll use them in MME, get whatever taste I get of them, whether it's 15%, 20% to try and stick with the field. And I know a lot of sharper guys that did do that. And I was underweight. Like I said all week, I'm not completely going off him. I don't think I'm going to be anywhere near the field, because I really like going the builds the other way. I also am only up against 80% of unique builds at that point, when 20% of the field has Kyle Stanley builds. And so there was that conversation. And then, Cards was saying, like, why don't, in my $200 single entry and up, I can just fade this guy because he'll be the same or higher in those fields, that then it makes sense for me. So my big money is off of Stanley, but my overall pool is on Stanley. So any thoughts to that one as well? I think that was a good angle to take on it, and I agreed with him on Wednesday.
Yep. Yeah, no, definitely agree. But again, that's kind of why I like it almost, because it just adds another element, another wrinkle when you have to make that decision on, okay, yeah, I understand that this guy is stone minimum price and he's a good play at that price, but he's going to come at ownership. And as we know, especially in golf, it's not like when there's a mid-price player in NBA, when there's almost no way they can't meet value. Like anyone can miss the cut, and Kyle Stanley can certainly miss the cut. So I think in PGA, it makes things interesting, in my opinion. And I almost sometimes wouldn't mind if they do that more often, just because the range of outcomes is so wide, and it just the game theory bros like yourself, I think, really enjoy that.
Yeah, I do like it personally. We've talked about it before in the past in other sports, different shows that I've been on here at Rotogrinders, where we said, like, imagine if they did this. Like, what if they did like a $1 play or something, and you could just, then the thing, like, because the other thing too is right now, and we've talked about this for years in PGA DFS, of leaving salary on the table, and just nobody does it. Like, literally, in some cases it's got a little bit better lately, but in some cases people were leaving like, it was like 98% of the field was spending 49.8 or more in the milli makers, the $20 milli makers, when there was only 4 per year that coincided with the majors. And that was just like literally the easiest way ever, was to leave $300 on the table. You had 150 uniques, give or take, maybe only 145, but you were right up there, and you had your way to the top with plenty of leverage in different spots throughout the tournament. So there's situations like that. And they said, like, what if they did like every week have like a few golfers at $1,000 and allow you to have angles that you can take? Maybe they don't need to do that low. They could do 5,000 or something and drop the floor. And then we saw it in football, in NFL this past season. They changed the running back, the minimum price, or the player pool, to 4,000, where we used to just jam in these $3,000 running backs, and then now they were 4,000. So still some decisions to be made there with your same salary, but different floor pricing. So I always like that. I want to keep going here. I'm going to look, just no disrespect to anyone else in the top of this. And again, shout out to Larietto, Backyard, all these guys. I mean, Adir's 2003 got 2 of the next. Zeus, man, good on all of them. I just want to look here, though. I like some of these builds. So you saw with Lariotto, went with the 3 9s, the 3 7s. I'll jump down first to JBC. He's crusher, every sport, every site. If you go out and follow him on Twitter, look up his stuff, he's everywhere. Went with the same build, and no Kyle Stanley necessary. Not to keep harping on the Stanley thing, just to show it off. Again, I like that he did this build this way, because he had the right build that ended up taking it down. It just, again, it didn't get all the right guys. And it looks like Siwoo, Gooch, and Wise. Siwoo, Wise, Cantlay, Scheffler. So it's Hovland and Gooch versus Xander, right? Whoops, sorry.
Yeah.
Hovland, Gooch versus Xander and Streelman. So that's where the miss was. But again, still a good overall lineup. And you look at that. And so I really like that build. build similar to what we're talking about. Once he went with the guys up top that were going to be heavily owned, picked up the leverage elsewhere, stayed out of the 6K range to get himself a unique build. There was just so many ways you could go through these ranges. And that's what I kept saying to cards. And I'll show it off in a second here on Wednesday night, is that when you went to the 7K range, it almost didn't matter who you played. Like, these were all great golfers, much better than the low 6K range. And if you go E. Hafner, an all-time great across the board, every sport, every site, you name it, everyone knows him. You look here, he did the stars build essentially. And instead of going 3 9Ks, we talked about this exact build, Cards and I, you could go with JT up top, get a couple of these guys in the 9K range, and then again, pick whoever you want in the 7K range. And of course, the guys that scored the best are showing up because they're the ones that got into those winning lineups. But again, no 6K range, no 11, and no 8. And we'll talk about that in one more second here. And then Go Sixers Go. Always talk about him on here. And you look at it again, another one, a little bit different, incorporating the ranges. But again, you didn't need to go. And there was some good plays in a guy like Alex Noren at 6,800 that could round out your lineup. And there was no difference from him and playing one of these guys in the 7K range. If you ask me, definitely had some good reasoning to play him here. And you look at that, and that's just, again, nobody in these ranges was owned. So it really didn't matter about total ownership as long as you didn't do something crazy. But that was my challenge again with Stanley, where you knew he was 18, then you might have had to get off some of these guys at the top. And I definitely felt very strongly about the guys at the top between X, Morikawa, Cantlay. Just talked about all the Cali guys. Like, I thought for sure there was correlation with Bryson winning there before, Morikawa winning the workday there before, the year before, Cantlay winning here before, Tiger Woods, a Cali kid himself, always having success at this course. So I really did think about that. And then John Rahm, who won it the year before, always plays well in California at courses over there. So to me, it was just a standard of that made sense to me. And I didn't want to go away from those guys. Not necessarily to go into that anymore, TJ, but the 8K range was interesting last week as well. It was one we talked about on the Wednesday show, Cards and I, where it was going so overlooked, and you see why. The Stars and Scrubs builds, the Stanley builds didn't require it. Any of those 3 9K, 3 7K, I didn't see anyone really incorporate it a lot, but I thought that was a way that you could get a little bit different within your builds. I'm just trying to see if I see anything here. Any thoughts on that? Because typically that's where we like to pepper up a range and play guys from there when we're doing the Wednesday show and come a full circle together, but it didn't end up panning out this week. You just didn't need it.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird, just dead zone. I mean, the 9K range was so strong, top to bottom. Almost every single player in there was just such a good option. And like you said, it seemed to me like the popular builds were either you drop all the way down to Stanley, or you just stay out of the 6K range entirely and do one of those kind of hybrid Stars and Scrubs of 3 9Ks, 3 7Ks. And because of that, you found the 8K range just did not get a ton of talk. Except for Louis, right? It's in there at 8,500. Yeah. But outside of Louis, I feel like it was just guys that were not getting talked up prior to the tournament. And then we kind of saw that play out in the ownership as well.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously Neiman hurt people there. Neiman was, I believe, 8,800. We had Fitz at 8,700. Like, there was guys, I like Fitz. I'll talk about him after. He was one of the ones that I sort of was saying, I like him at this low of ownership. You don't need to go crazy with him. Was definitely heavy on Louis on the week. Loved Louis. Didn't come through really. He came through, made the cut, but 60 points is not going to cut it. And that's sort of what you see. Just showing it off. Shout out A. Aaron. He's always around in RG member. See him in lots of stuff, taking it down. But Lariotto, didn't need the 8K range, but you look at all these guys in the 7K range that scored. And I did like peppering in a couple guys in the 8K range. Like I said, I know it didn't pan out and I can take that L, but I think as far as looking at it and going back, that's like I said, we're on a results show. I don't mind talking about it and just trying to learn from it. I think sometimes if you look back right now and really think about it, Neiman, maybe, but like Fitz, Louis, the one thing that's clear to me now, TJ, and I'll get your thoughts, is that the 9K range was much closer to the 10K range than the 8K range was to the 9K range. If you follow, like, those guys just don't close. Like, we had X, Morikawa, Cantlay, all these guys from like 10-4 down, I guess. The 8K range just didn't come close to them. So I think in hindsight, looking back, just letting that 8K range go and maybe keeping my Louis love. I know it wouldn't have worked out in the end, but you got to stick with your conviction and Fitz. Like, that's where I was at. Then you didn't really need to go in there, and you could look at all these builds, and pretty much the 7K range was wide open. There was no need to skip over it or try and mess with that too much. So any thoughts on that? And then we'll move on to the next tournament and keep going here.
Yeah, I just think so much of the win equity in this tournament was tied up in the 9K plus range that, like you said, yeah, there's a pretty significant tier differentiation, I would say, between a lot of the 8K guys and then the upper nines, 10K, lower 10K. So I mean, Justin Thomas at 10,200, right? That's like as cheap as we ever see Justin Thomas. It's interesting. There's so many strong elite golfers that they can't price all of them above 10K, and it's almost like out of necessity to have guys priced in the 9K range. You get some of the best golfers in the world sitting there at 9,500, 9,700. So I think it's something and probably a theme that we'll continue to see in the stronger fields. Once you have all the elite players in there, there's bound to be some of just absolute studs sitting in the 9Ks.
Oh, couldn't agree more. You said it best there. And then just linking back to what I said before, you look at it from two ways. Now I keep thinking as you're talking, and it's like the 9K range is just so many good golfers that just have to get pushed down there in these amazing fields, strong fields like we've got. And also, if you think back to me, I was arguing this all week, so why not go all in on it? But the 7K range was so much better than the 6K range, regardless of what we got. Some of these results out of guys like Willett, Dufner. I mean, this is already, shout out to Cool Shades. Congrats on the win, but this is already a crazy anomaly when you've got a guy that played 3 rounds and shows up in the winning lineup because he was just dominating the tournament, something we may never see again in the history of golf. But, it's very rare. Hunter Mahan, one time when his wife was pregnant, had to leave the tournament as he was leading. But it's something rare. Like you won't see these things very often. So that's just what stood out to me. But yeah, the 6K range to me was just not close to the 7s, and the 7s weren't even getting any ownership because it was so dispersed and spread out that you really could take all the guys you wanted from 9 to 10K and Rahm at 11 if you wanted to go there, or whatever you chose to do, and just pepper in those 7K guys and just let it all fall together that way and still get to the top. The 3.9, 3.7K we just saw. This one's got 6s in it though, but like I said, it also has John Rahm. So this one's a little bit crazy. I do like the build a little bit, but one thing I did caution on, and again, egg on my face, it comes back to me here, is that I really didn't like the 2 6K guys. What I do like that they did with the 2 6K guys, just because of how tough this field is and how much position placement mattered, what I do like is they didn't go with Kyle Stanley. Not to victory lap that more, but just the point of, if you were going to go the 2 6K route, it was better to do it without Stanley because Stanley was already going to be 20%. And still be able to get the guys at the top with higher ownership. So what do you think of this lineup, TJ? And then we'll move down. There's Backyard again, by the way, second place here as well.
Yeah, I like what you said about not, when you're going double 6Ks, not going with Stanley. I feel like, in general too, there's probably a lot of Rahm Stanley combinations out there, right? Because once you get Rahm as the most expensive or second most expensive guy into the lineup, you're going to want to naturally get that salary savings. So I like the pivot there. Generally speaking, in agreement with you, though, I don't think there was a ton of need to double up on 6K guys, especially in this week, especially when the 7K range, I think, was significantly higher. But, you get Rahm, Cantlay, Scheffler, can't really argue with that either. And then you just hope that, hey, my 2 6K guys squeak through the crut. And as you can see, you didn't need a ton from them, right? It's not like Willett and Dufner went out there and lit the world on fire, but made it through to the weekend, got their 60, 70 points, and then just loaded up on the rest of the lineup. And like you said, crazy to win a tournament when you paid 11K for guys that only played 3 rounds. What did Rahm end up as the 4th highest fantasy scorer behind?
I think he was, yeah. So
yeah,
the
makes sense.
Cantlay, I might have been
more Kawa, Scheffler than Rahm, unless there was someone else in between them.
No, I think that's correct, actually. Yeah. So yeah, that makes sense. With that said too, though, the other thing is, just thinking in hindsight, I guess, the only other thing I could say is if you were going with Stanley down there, I didn't mind if you stacked someone else low owned, as long as you played the low owned guys at the top, but then that didn't really, pan out super well. But if you could have went Rory or someone that people just weren't going back to, then it's okay. Cause you still need a lot of things to happen to get it right. That's why this game is so tough and why we're dissecting it here every Monday to get back and go through it. But I do think, like I said, at least then most people were going with Stanley and then being able to fit Rahm. And we talked about maybe you could do 4 9K guys as a way to get unique with Stanley and another 6K guy in the higher end or something like that, where you could still find a way, but it was really tough to make it work. And if you ended up doing that, I believe even with the cheapest versions, it looked like, you still had to use some of the lower end guys. Like we didn't want Knox Stanley was kind of the key is what we were looking at when we went through it there. So we'll keep it moving here. We're not going to spend too much more time. I shouted out Ski Basher earlier. He's up there. Morikawa, Cantlay, Lowry, using one of the good 8K guys. That's how you do it. Cameron Tringali, Gooch, and CT Pan. That looks good. But I want to give a shout out to RJ Rat 84, RG member, always doing his thing. He's been crushing it lately in all sports, just on a tear over the last, I'd want to say now, it's definitely not a heater. It's just a good skill, man. It's like 6 to 8 months I've been following along and seeing what he's been doing. So congrats to him. I know he doesn't, want to hear congrats on a 10th place. None of us do that play competitively as we do, but I thought we'd look at his pool, man. He's been doing some big things. This is still a very tough field to beat. So to come top 10, 83,000, all the lineups are going to look similar, but took these things down. It's the same guys there. So figure we'd look at his pool for our, exposure deep dive here, not just that one lineup that he had, but if we go down, we can go down here to RJ Rat 84. He did play the max 150. Of course, that's why I want to check it out. See what he did here, TJ. I'm just going to move some things around on my side. You can check it out here. So it looks like about, let me see, 35. It looks like around 35, 36 golfers total for my numbers, starting with Cantlay. That always helps when you've got the winner at the top in 46%. And then going down, a lot of leverage, man. That's not just the light shade of green. That's blue and then really green. So good way of doing it. Obviously, as we always talk about, seems obvious, but you guys remember we're sitting on here on rotogrinders.com, a very experienced site with people looking at this and digging in. Not everyone's doing this every week. So you may think, oh, it's obvious you got to have leverage on guys. Not everyone is building like this. You can go check it out yourself. And that's why we're looking at guys that play well, do well, and not just the winning lineups all the time. These guys know what they're doing. So RJ Rat had a nice pool here. TJ, what are your first thoughts? I mentioned some of the leverage and whatnot, but anything you see, I see Stanley is interesting, and then you can take it from here.
Yeah, this is actually my kind of player pool right here. Really like the way that they went about it. I feel like it's a way that I find myself building a lot, where, I mean, you can see the top, 8 or so people are all 14, 15% plus owned. So it's not like they're going all in on some super off the board plays, but they're taking what they think is the best plays, but they're making sure that they get at least double the field on just about all of them here. So obviously when landing on Cantlay and Morikawa as the top 2 in the playoff, from a results perspective, certainly works out well, but also thought that they're just 2 really strong plays overall. Mentioned that Kyle Stanley play, and I think that that's fine too, right? Getting double the field on someone that you knew was going to be reasonably chalky, so don't mind that at all. And then, just the leverage is really what it all comes down to here. I think you got to make your way all the way down to Hovland, to the first one where they kind of went about with the field, which again makes sense in that certain situation. So really nice player pool here, good construction, and not surprised that it led to some top 10 lineups.
Yeah, I know you like the guy just below Hovland right there. Got to get
the train just keeps rolling. He just keeps moving.
He's doing it, man. He's let us down maybe once, but I mean, if you took the average, it's definitely very,
one time when he made it,
very well worth it.
10.
Yes, that hurt for sure. But hey, he's been doing his thing and bounced back here. I think, a couple things stood out, like you said, is one is two, you got to, everyone that's watching needs to remember also in stronger fields, there's obviously a lot more ownership dispersion. So like, it's spaced out quite a bit more. He still took stands on zero Keegan, which we didn't like him at all. Obviously, Cards and I talked last week. That one seemed a bit odd. It was awesome to see it work out in our favor. He's usually the first round leader, and he wasn't for once. So didn't bounce back or anything. But Xander taking 0 on worked out to be good. He only put up 68 points. But like I just said, like a lot of these guys up here were still some of the highest owned guys that he's getting this leverage on. But at the same time, they're all the great plays, right? They all worked out in good favor. So I think that's one thing to look at. The other thing to look at, I'm going to go back and check this out, is if you are going to go in on Stanley, I do like the idea of going in. Like he's going to look, and now I want to kind of go back and see if we can look at some of his builds quick here. But yeah, took a good stand on some guys, like you said, Cantlay, Grillo, Morikawa, Matsuyama. Stanley, part of the reason of that chalk was his ball striking, but these are all excellent ball strikers and guys that have been on. One other interesting note, probably not too happy about this one. This was a last minute withdrawal. Jason Day.
I was just looking into that. When did the withdrawal happen?
Early enough to move. And also, I'm not sure if he caught the show. Maybe it's one that he missed, or maybe he doesn't usually tune in, but if he is watching this one, hopefully he'll start catching the Wednesday show, because our advice was to play 0 Jason Day over here at Rotogrinders, based on the fact that it actually had to, I know he withdrew because of his back, but he has a 4th kid on the way. Haven't got news yet if he had his 4th child yet or not, but I knew like it would be a spot where he would bail no matter what. And with the Pro-Am withdrawal, it just seemed likely. And I know he's bounced back from that before. I don't hate taking the stand and just going after it anyway, but I definitely think it was a guy we should have pivoted off of, but keep going here. A lot of good plays here in this pool, right? They all 93, 72, 72. Like he picked a good pool here. So shout out to RJ Rat. Love to see what he's doing over here. Just want to pop back real quick and see if we can get, it'll show anonymous after the bunch, but so his Kyle Stanley that came in 10th was Stanley, Wise, 2 8K guys, which, as I said before, I love this, super sharp. Like I said, if you're going to use them, I think everyone goes right to the very top, or 3 9K guys at least, or something like that. So getting unique within the Stanley build by using 2 8K guys was very solid. I like that setup of it. You still get Morikawa, Cantlay, Louis, Lowry, Wise. Like these are guys that have been playing great golf. So I like that build. The next one was just a 2v2, but still using 2 8K guys. This one was using a 10 and 2 9s with no 8s, and then using 1 7 in Henley. I liked Henley quite a bit last week. So any other thoughts here, man? We're going to get out of here pretty quick. I'm going to do the $200 single entry fast, but any other thoughts on RJ Rat's pool and just ways he used those Stanley builds?
No, I think solid pool overall. Like I said, really like the construction, really like getting the leverage and, taking the plays that you think are the good plays and making sure that you're getting around double the field for those guys that are maybe 14 to 15% ownership range, getting 30% plus on them, I think is a very valuable strategy. And then mixing in some plays at the bottom and at lower ownership. So nice work. And like we said, maybe not the happiest with a 10th place finish, but always good to be finding yourself at the top of the leaderboard and just giving yourself enough chances so that you have that one time when things happen to go your way on Sunday and find yourself at the very, very top.
Yeah, and he's had it enough lately. I think he said it plenty. He's never enough, but he's had it a lot. So good for him. And shout out there. Here's when he had the Stanley Knox combo. Which, like I said, I didn't love that personally, but I don't mind putting 1 or 2 of them together if you want, at least leaving $300 to be different. Picking a couple spots like a Leishman leverage, Reed, not as popular as he normally is in tough fields at 12%. I know you could get as high as 22 there with Hovland and whatnot, but still, and then you still get your Rahm Cantlay. Like it was like these guys just felt so good at the top. Like it felt like a place where you just knew the former winner, the former champions, like people do just show up. So mark that in your calendars for next year. The California connection, I'll stick with it. And then guys that have played well there in the past, they just continue. It doesn't matter the incoming form. I said we'd get to this. Got about 5-6 minutes left here. So I'll do a quick overview. It wasn't anything too serious. 76th place. Nothing special, really, overall. I think, what is this, 1389 in the field. And this is where I said, see, so backyard 20, I've already counted, 170 or 180,000 across these tournaments and won this one. So with that same build. So congrats on a Stanley lineup, getting to the top and getting it done. It's his same lineup that he's won everywhere at the 515.5. We've seen Reggie's run in the past up here. So good on him. I just show mine off just to give an idea what I did last week and where my thought was. Came up 100 points plus short, but talked about this. So X, Louis, and Henley were 3 of my 4 conviction plays. The other guy was Fitz. It's just when I looked at the build of what I wanted to stay out of the top range. I wanted to stay out of the 6K range. And I knew there was enough guys. And if you look at what we always talk about, again, single entry, all the ownerships go up, but it's, 2 guys in the 20s, call it, 2 guys in the teens, and then 2 guys below 10. And God, it's hard to even get Tringali down there anymore. And just got him in there for you. I put him in there, the value plays. And I know you weren't on the show with me last Monday. We actually didn't end up having a show. Apologize to everyone. We had some Resultsdb stuff and we didn't get it on there, but I got to grill you a little bit on Tuesday. I said, he went against the rules, man. He still put his $7,500 value play. He threw in Cameron Tringali at 7,600. I knew he'd do it, but I laughed that you actually did it.
Cards pinged me during I think it was when you guys were recording on Wednesday. And he was like, you cheated, 7,600. And I was like, there's a couple guys that I allow myself to cheat for. It's Tringali, Corey Connors. Those are mainly the 2 that I know that I've snuck in the 7,600 with them when appropriate.
Oh yeah, you got to do it. I remember when Connors was like 9,500, you were like, damn, not even close. Can't get there. Noto, if he had to pick 5 guys and he had 4 ahead of Harman somehow, would still always get a Harman tag in too. It's just the way we go about things here. If Cards could load his pool with Reed pre-X'd out, he would do that too. So there's a lot. Everyone's got their thing. You guys know me with Louis. So he was, of course, going in there. But yeah, overall, just looking at it, we're going to get out of here. Cantlay talked about loving the Cali kids in that range. Picked the wrong one, didn't get Morikawa. I could have went up there. Louis didn't come through for me, but I stuck with guys that I told you guys I was playing and loved with my conviction. Two guys I'm always on, Streelman and Tringali. They just fit in that range. And Henley really let me down last week. He missed the 6 out of 6. So it was only a 5 out of 6 because of him. And I just took a shot. I liked his approach game coming in. He's played good at Nicklaus courses in the past. We talk about ball strikers. I felt like between him and Stanley was realistically, I'm getting the same thing. But now that you think back, Stanley was cheaper. So why didn't you just do that and get yourself a little bit better lineup and be closer to the top? It's just the way she goes. I got no problem taking the L on that. Like I said, we've talked through it quite a bit. Any thoughts? You can be honest here. Give me thoughts on my build, TJ, and then let the people know where they can find you, and I'll get us out of here just after.
I like the build a lot. I think it's really, really solid. I know. I personally was surprised. I didn't think Xander was going to come in as extremely chalky as he did. Sometimes it's just hard to tell when there's so many strong plays between 9,500 and 10,400, right? It's hard to predict which ones are going to be 30%, which ones are going to be 15%. So, but I loved him as a play. Thought that he was great in all formats. And yeah, the Louis play was probably my favorite one in the 8K range as well. And I think it's like we always talk about, that ownership breakdown of 2 in the 20s or around the 20s, 2 in the teens, 2 below 10%. And I really like the Stanley fade in the single entries, because as we saw, coming in at 35%, I mean, he could easily miss the cut, and then you're only dealing against 2/3 of the field after that. So
oh yeah,
I think it makes a ton of sense. And yeah, I mean, it was just hard to get leverage on some of these guys. Like you can see Finau, Xander, Hovland, all of them. Again, the 9K range was just absolutely loaded this week. And so it was really splitting hairs between them.
Yeah, not a good week for the chalk either. If you look at the overall, right? Stanley's one, but the other one's not really great weeks. Obviously, X was up there a little bit, but Bradley missing, Finau not having a great week overall. Like all these guys for their cost didn't really pan out the way everyone wanted them to. So let the people know where they can find you, TJ, what you got going on here at Rotogrinders this week and whatnot, and then I'll get us home.
Yes, sir. You guys can find me on Twitter at TJL5124DFS. Be back out with the value plays article this week. Sorry for not getting an article out last week, just tagged up the plays, but we'll be getting back with an article this week, and looking forward to another fun week of PGA DFS.
Yeah, thank you guys as always. You know where to find me on Twitter at ToeTagginTambo. Got a lot of other content coming out this week. The Tuesday show with Cards and Noto, as always. We'll have a special guest on the Wednesday Lineup HQ show, and then we'll go from there. Other than that, thank you and good luck.